All right, welcome to the part two of the App Store Optimization Skillshare class by Tyler York. Optimize your description for people and for robots. What do you mean for people and for robots, you might ask? So, when I say optimizing your App Store description for people, I mean that it's approachable, it's not written like it's clearly keyword mining, it grabs the user's attention and gets them interested immediately, and it shows social proof. So whether that's through sort of PR or we were featured, sort of a lot of apps like to throw that in there, or 5-star user reviews, just showing people that it's a great app and doing so sort of on their terms, in terms that they believe. For robots, to optimize your description for robots, you need to think about sort of what is the computer looking for. So does it match the ASO criteria? In particular with Android, we talked about this in the first section, but does your description sort of hit the right spots with keywords? Does it have the keywords in the appropriate places based on where you like, sort of what emphasis you want to put on each one? Things like that. And, does it use keywords multiple times, which actually is pretty important. So when you're writing a good description, something that's sort of universal is good copywriting. And my favorite copywriting model, which I think works really well for this, is AIDA, or attention, interest, desire, and action, or call to action. So you want to get people's attention immediately. You want to pull them into the story with the first couple of sentences. And so really you're trying to answer the question, why do you care? Why is this person looking at this app? And trying to sort of pull them away from the browsing that they're doing and make them go, hey, I want to check that out. Interest. So once you've got them looking at you, you want to get them interested in what your app has to offer. And so, frankly, I think that pretty much every single game or app on the App Store has other apps that do similar things at this point. So you want to talk about what makes your app unique, what you're really proud of with it, sort of what, I mean, you're the one with the business, so the thought should be sort of like, what am I building this business on, right? Like, what's making me more desirable to consumers than these other apps that are out there, and then write about that. And then also sort of as more proof of these things, you want to include all that social proof stuff that I just talked about, whether you have great reviews from people, you have quotes from press, you were featured, you were ranked #1 in certain countries. All of these things are great to include in all of your descriptions, so that sort of users can see that you're already validated for all of these things that you say you're going to do by these other people. Now, desire. So once you get to desire, you want to start sort of telling the story, maybe not like the full, like how my company came to be story, but like why the app exists, what was the pain point that you found, and try and resonate with the user. Try and make it so that they sort of say, yeah, you know what, I have that pain point too, and I now want to get this app. And then this is also the place where a lot of people put a features list, and this is a good place to put it. It's like, not only does this app solve your pain, but it does blah, 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 and blah. And it just kind of reinforces that call to action, which is the last step. So you should always, this is something that a surprising number of apps don't do, but if someone gets all the way to the bottom of your description, you need to tell them to go download it. Like, it's amazing how many people miss this, but the call to action at the bottom is actually very important. And I think that, it's also great for getting people to maybe like check out your social pages, maybe putting a call to action, also like following this and putting a call to action in your updates to get more people on those things to communicate with you and things like that. So don't miss the opportunity to get someone who's engaged to do something. And the first thing you want them to do is download your app. So let's talk about optimizing your description for Apple. So iOS 6 made some pretty big changes, and the first and foremost change that you'll notice is that the screenshot is the first thing you see, and it's huge. Um, and then sort of digging deeper into what the actual description looks like, um, once you get past that screenshot, you often only get a very small preview, really those first couple sentences to explain your point, and then they have to click more in order to read the rest of the description. So it puts even more emphasis on those first couple of lines. So my tips for iOS since iOS 6, you need to really invest in your icon, which we're going to cover in part 3, and that first screenshot. The first screenshot should be an action shot. It should show users how the app is used, and it should also include a little bit of text, either making it more exciting, explaining the purpose behind it, or just sort of showing why it's awesome. Um, and it's it's more important than ever to nail that screenshot. The second thing is really, like I said, the more emphasis on those first couple of sentences, because that's the only part of the description that comes up initially. I would say now probably 90% of people won't read past them, so you really want them to encapsulate what your app is all about and get people excited about it. Here's an example of a great description. This is for Lily, which is an iOS app that was on stage at the Apple keynote event. As you can see, it's like that's a huge bonus to its credibility. And then it immediately goes into the attention aspect. And you can see here that it follows the sort of AIDA formula by going into first just it's one of the most visually stunning games available on iOS. Like the first thing it does is just drops you right into what it thinks is the most important part about it, and it gets you excited. The second thing, to get you interested, it starts telling the story a little bit. It starts talking about how how the game is played, how it's unique, and then it goes in right into just recognition from some of the top game company review sites. And one thing I'd like to kind of point out here is notice what these quotes focus on. So you want to think about what you want the quotes to say, because oftentimes a good reviewer, if you kind of drop some hints, will give you good quotes around the things that you're most proud of. So they're clearly very excited about how beautiful it is, how artistic it is, and really every single quote mentions that. And so you can see what sort of their marketing department was gunning for when they set out and tried to get sort of press coverage of this. All right, so let's go talk about Google Play a little bit. So Android, like I said earlier in the discoverability section, Android's actually extremely keyword based. So while you should follow AIDA when you're writing for humans, on Android you have to actually write for robots as well, much more so than on iOS, where keyword placement, doesn't really work. And so for Android, you want to have the keyword in the title of the app if possible, like your best keyword. And then you want to have keyword and key phrase placement, and you want to have lots of it. It's kind of made a little joke there, but you want to use the same keywords multiple times. Like, don't be afraid to use a keyword 5 times over the course of your description, which is really kind of, it might seem like overkill when you're writing it, but if you write it intelligently, it's still pretty readable. And so we'll show you a good description in a second. Another thing that's may not work anymore, but I wanted to include it anyways, is competing app name placement. So if you put in the names of your competitors' apps, you'll show up in searches for their app, which is always fun, and actually can build you a decent long tail. And then localization. So Android actually gives you tools to localize your descriptions and will reward you for localizing pretty significantly. So here's an example of an Android description. This is actually Lookout Mobile Security's description. And you can see just it's packed with keywords. This is partially my fault, but it worked quite well. When we started with Lookout Mobile Security, because look like antivirus wasn't in the name of the app, we actually ranked 8th for antivirus under all of these apps with maybe a tenth of our user base, but um, they all had the name antivirus. So we've since changed the name to Lookout Mobile Antivirus and Security. And then you'll notice that the word antivirus pops up in here quite often. So best antivirus, Find My Droid, and backup app, these are all keywords. Backup app for Android is a key phrase. Protect your phone is a key phrase. Find a lost or stolen phone is another key phrase. And so you'll just see, right, you can just walk through this and see everything that they're optimized for. You'll also see antivirus quite a bit. See, antivirus, antivirus, antivirus. It came up 3 times in the first 2 sentences. And so another thing that they did that's kind of clever, that I first started doing when I was there, was in the features list, you use that as an excuse to repeat your keywords and also build a long tail of keywords. So antivirus, block malware, spyware, and Trojans. Each of them is a keyword that they're optimizing for. Um, schedule daily or weekly antivirus scans if antivirus scan is a keyword. Um, Automatic over-the-air protection against latest threats. Scan new files on your SD card to protect against malware. All of these things kind of build into the optimized store description for a number of different keywords. And also, if you're looking for a way to track what keywords are driving traffic to your Android app, if you use the Google Analytics SDK for Android, I think it does that automatically, which is great, in your sort of referring keywords section. Oh, and last but not least, notice how many Google Plus Ones this app has. While it is not proven to make a difference on the Android store as of yet, I would bet money that Google Plus One either already has an effect on your ranking for search and leaderboard in the Google Play Store, or it will soon. So I would start investing in that. Now let's talk about the Amazon App Store. Because it is Android based, everything's going to be largely the same. But they actually published this list of specific tips that they were looking for. And most of this stuff is pretty straightforward. I mean, these slides will be available to you, so I'm not going to go over every single bullet point. But while all of this stuff is straightforward, it's still good to go down that list with your Android Amazon description, doing any of these don'ts down here before. And I think that it's especially important when you're writing for Amazon to try and think about these don'ts, because there's some things in here that might kind of catch you off guard. Like don't refer to your app as this app, which a lot of people do. Don't use excess punctuation. Maybe you're using a bunch of periods to like build a sort of list looking thing. Just keep an eye out for that stuff. All right, now we're going to move on to part 3, design an eye-catching icon, in the next section. Thanks for listening.